A former Somali president is retaking the country's top job. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who led Somalia just 5 years ago, has been elected by the country's legislators. He beat out 36 other candidates, including incumbent President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed. The vote came during tightened security around the capital, Mogadishu, as fears of militant attacks loomed. The peaceful transition is raising hopes that the long-delayed election will produce a government that can tackle the country's challenges. President Mohamud says his government will be inclusive and promised to work closely with international partners. Shortly after his election, the U.S. announced it would be redeploying several hundred troops to Somalia to support the fight against the militant group al-Shabab. An attack on an African Union base earlier this month killed 10 peacekeepers. President Mohamud also pledged to continue to work with Turkiye on the security front, praising Ankara's previous support. And to discuss where relations could be headed between Turkey and Somalia, joining me now from Istanbul is Elem Eyrice. She is a political analyst and author who writes extensively on Turkey-Africa relations. And from Abuja, David Otto. He is the director for the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Elem, let me begin with you. Somalia's new president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, knows Turkey well, having led Somalia for 5 years. And how will relations move forward, do you think, between Ankara and Mogadishu?
Well, I don't expect a radical change in bilateral relations because, the two countries already enjoy strong ties and which have accelerated after President Erdogan's first visit to the country in 2011. And a year later, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud was elected as the 8th president of the country, and several cooperation agreements were signed between the two countries. And so he's no stranger to Turkey's efforts, but instead he supported those initiatives during the early years of Turkey's involvement in the country. And right after his re-election, this time as the 8th president of the country, he reiterated that relations with Turkey would thrive, while Turkish officials also noted their commitment to expand their involvement in the country in different sectors, including trade relations, security cooperation, or humanitarian assistance as well. So I think we do have enough room to be optimistic about the future relations.
So, David, President Mohamud said Turkey has touched the hearts and minds of Somalis. What has Turkey done differently than other countries that are aiding Somalia to earn this goodwill?
I think what is important is that essentially Turkey has been working hand in gloves with the aspirations of the previous administration. And what we are seeing now perhaps would create an environment of some kind of stability, because, of course, the elections has been a very strong distraction for several countries that have interest in helping Somalia, especially Turkey as well. So I think, what this election provides is an environment of stability. So we're looking forward, to seeing Turkey helping further in the areas of national reconciliation, helping the Somalian central government to bring the state much more closer to power in Mogadishu, but also, working hand in gloves on national security, especially dealing with al-Shabab.
Yes. So, Elem, how has Turkey's latest rapprochement with several Gulf countries, including the UAE and Saudi Arabia, impacted the power balance in Somalia and the broader region? Will this benefit all sides at the end of the day?
Yes, I think the mending of ties between these two rival groups, as one would say, Turkey and Qatar on the one side, and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates on the other side, their competition in the wider Horn of Africa region, we've seen that they are trying to mend their ties. This would have certain implications on Somalia as well. So I don't think we should see Somalia as a venue for competition, but instead the country can benefit from the involvement of different actors that would invest in key sectors, in the needed sectors, and contribute to the country's stabilization efforts. So their engagements might not only reduce the country's dependence on a few partners, but it can also enable it to diversify its trade and investment partners and increase its bargaining leverage. So I think this might offer some opportunities for Somalia, although there are also some risks like creating asymmetrical relations. But still, I think the country can benefit from the external support in tackling the several challenges that it faces right now.
So, David, Somalia has released nearly $10 million, it seized from a UAE plane 4 years ago, in a sign that relations between the two countries are normalizing as well. We've just mentioned that Turkiye and the United Arab Emirates have started mending their ties after years of mistrust that blew out into the public. How will this impact Somalia going forward? And if rivalries are lowered in the Horn of Africa region?
I think what Somalia should focus on now that they have a new president. Of course, you're correct that the president has been there before. I think what they should focus on now is to see how they can benefit from, all this money that, was seized, to develop the economy. The country is suffering from humanitarian downtrodden situation. It's a time for Somali to benefit, from some level of stability. But again, this is not a short-term realization. Mm-hmm. We've just had the election of the president, so it's going to take time to develop, the country, for him to appoint his ministers, for a country that is really clan-based. So let's give them some time and hope that, we will see some improvement.
So recently, Elem, U.S. President Joe Biden has ordered the redeployment of U.S. troops to Somalia. Why has the U.S. administration reversed this decision taken by the former President Donald Trump? Has this situation deteriorated in the country?
Yes, of course. There's this increasing attacks of the terrorist al-Shabab group. And the new administration inherited several challenges from its predecessor. These include not only security challenges, but they also, there has been a political chaos in the country. The elections were suspended more than a year. And there are also other challenges. The country needs investments in key sectors, including health, education, infrastructure as well. And there's this food security or food insecurity issue, because the UN, has recently warned that the country might experience a new famine that might have more devastating effects than the one in 2011. So several countries are considering withdrawing their forces from the region for security risks. But I think it also highlights Turkey's role in the country, because, Turkey played a leading role in the post-construction process in the country. Although its military cooperation with the country goes back to early 1990s, it has accelerated in recent years. So, but the military cooperation should be in the form of training or deployment of peacekeeping soldiers, I think. So it should not be in a way to intervene in the internal affairs of the country.
So, Dave, what's your take? I mean, could U.S. troops help Somalia to counter militant groups like al-Shabab, and what could they do differently than the past?
I don't think it's going to help. Deploying U.S. forces to Somalia, it's not the solution. Of course, we've seen attacks by al-Shabab in Mogadishu, in the southwestern states, and also in Ishebela. But I think what we should be looking at is for the U.S. to strengthen the Somali National Security Forces rather than deploying more troops into Somalia. I think, might is not the right way to go about it. We need much more economic and political stability. And I think Somalia has the willingness at this point in time to work with perhaps the African Union. There is the ATMIS, which has just been replaced with the African Union mission. So I think, we should, focus on developing the capacity of the Somalian troops rather than, bringing in more troops from the U.S.
Mm-hmm. So, Elem, do you think he would consider taking a different approach towards the terror organization, or the return of the U.S. troops has already hampered that possibility?
Well, I think the country needs external support more than ever, but Turkey has this different understanding from the traditional powers, different understanding from the U.S. as well, because this traditional approach basically says that we should provide peace and stability first, and only then we can focus on economic development. But what Turkey has been saying and doing so far is that we can do them simultaneously. We can invest in the country's key sectors, including infrastructure, education, health, agriculture as well. And then we can provide to the country stability as well. So the deployment, increasing the deployment of U.S. forces or withdrawing those U.S. forces might have serious implications for the country. Yes. The country needs, as I noted before, external support more than ever. It has faced serious challenges, not only in the security domain, but also economic domain as well.
So, David, how is Mohamud planning to contend with the security threats faced by this al-Shabab terror organization? Does he have the necessary backing, and what are the expectations of Somalis in this regard?
I think he's been there before, as we rightly mentioned, in 2012 to 2017. So he's got to come up with a new kind of a Hassan Sheikh strategy. And that means, he's got to, first of all, reconcile the various factions. Somali is a very clan-based and warlordism kind of society. So there are people that will be unhappy with the fact that he's won the presidency. So he's got to do some kind of reconciliation. That should be followed very closely, again, as I mentioned earlier on, by bringing in the states to enjoy some level of, feel that they belong, the decentralization of power, away from Mogadishu. But also economic and humanitarian development. This all will enhance his national security strategy. But I think, from my part, I think what he should be doing now is to look at a situation where Somalians and Somali can take care of its internal security. They need help from, countries like Turkey, from the United States. But I don't think the kind of help that they need is of an overwhelming force deployment, from the U.S. I think what they need is, economic development, some technical support, and therefore, it gives them some level of independence in the long run to deal with terrorism.
Yes. So, all right, Elem, David, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.